give us a little bit of we don't really know you that well. The main thing we know of you is you fly planes, you build bikes, and you ride some of the most aggressive geometry bikes I've ever seen in my entire life. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Coaches on Couches.
Being slouches with a non-slouch. We got another non-slouch. It's a good thing we do interviews more regularly so we can have non-slouchers here. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah. I hope everybody
First
had a
one
good,
of 2019.
Yeah, good Christmas, holiday, New Year. I know you've made all of your resolutions and broken them already.
Which we might be talking about next week. We floated the idea of talking about what to do after you don't follow through with your resolutions.
So I am Coach Dale Sanford, and this is Coach Bryant Funston. We are your hosts today. We've got Earl Glazer on the couch today. We'll be talking to him here shortly. But first, shout-outs. I've got a good one. Mateo Vanderpool. He had quite the save in this last cross race. He literally was getting bucked off the bike.
Looked like rodeo, huh?
He was getting bucked, and in midair, with his butt this high off the saddle, he dismounted.
This high being, for those not watching live and listening to the podcast, was about 18 inches, I think.
Yeah, he was roughly 18 inches above the saddle with the back wheel off the ground. Dismounts in midair. Takes 3 or 4 steps and remounts the bike. I mean,
that's skills there.
It was he was literally the bike got all wobbly. He hit an uphill real quick, and the back end just started coming up, and he just dismounted midair.
I've had a few times where my butt's come off the saddle that far, and it's resulted in broken things on my body. Not nearly as skilled as him. That's why he's a pro. I got my shout out.
What you got?
New Year's Day, we had one of our House of Pain cycling classes to kick things off right. Day off for most people. But at 6 p.m., we had 25 people show up live online to knock out a challenging, toughest one of the season so far, trainer workout. So that was great to see, kicking things off right. Earl, what do you got? You got anything?
No shout-outs to me.
No
Just
shout-outs?
glad to be here. Next shout-outs to you two for bringing me here.
You bet. We're excited to chat with you.
Yeah.
Funston, I heard that you threw in a little mental adversity training into that
Oh, yes.
New Year's Day workout.
Oh, yes. So part of the beauty of the hop is you have the workout laid out that we tell everyone, but then a big aspect that we like to do is the mental adversity training side of things, where we'll have you at a set zone, set effort level. You know the time that you think you're going, and then when that time ends and you're ready to ease off and recover, we're like, 1 more minute, time to keep going. And the whole point being, can you actually push yourself? Did you think you were at your limit, and now you learned you can go a minute harder or a minute longer?
Yeah.
So we like to mix that in occasionally. Although it may backfire eventually. People are just going to be riding at 70% of what they think they can because they're just prepping for the mental adversity extender.
There are those that'll do it, but for the most part, I think it's a huge benefit to people to kind of learn where the ceiling is and how to go past.
The mental side of the sports, as much, I would say even more than the physical side is.
Especially on a group ride if I'm being challenged. And you've got to keep that gap closed. I'll think I'm at my limit, but the gap will start opening. And sometimes I find the strength to close it back up and life gets better.
Exactly.
Other times I'm off the bat.
So, Earl, give us a little bit of we don't really know you that well. The main thing we know of you is you fly planes, you build bikes, and you ride some of the most aggressive geometry bikes I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm pretty sure Earl coined "slam that stem."
Yes.
Because you're generally below the top of the head tube.
Yeah.
And have the bars really rotated forward, right? Your brake hoods are typically.
I like to reach way out with the brake hoods. I don't like the brakes pushing me back upright.
So you like to kind of sink down into them versus having them fighting them.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I get a lot of comments. A lot of people say they can spot me from a good half mile away.
That's for
sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I passed you on the green line a few times, and I'm like, there's Earl.
Yep.
So what, kind of give a background on your kind of life scenario now, work, family, that kind of stuff.
Well, let's see. Right now, I've been in Memphis for 28 years. I'm married. I've been married for 35 years. I've got a 32-year-old son and a 29-year-old son. I'm a pilot out at FedEx, so that adds challenges to training and things like that. And I've found different ways over the years to combat that.
Yep.
I've been a cyclist since about 1972, and I went around the early 2000s. I kind of shifted over to running a little bit, some marathons, and then hurt my foot and decided I would hop on the bike. And I'd been riding while I was running.
So riding was more of a cross-training thing while you were bigger into the running?
And used riding as cross-training, hurt my foot, hopped on the bike, and said, man, I really miss this a lot.
Yeah.
And I've been back on it ever since.
Okay.
So did you do much like competitive cycling racing?
Back, yes, there was a little bit. I lived in Texas for a while, and we had a lot of non-sanctioned racing there, and I did some of that. And then I came here, and when I got here, it was the Hightailers race team. And then we broke off because I think we were sucking all the money out of the Hightailers. And it was a mutual agreement to find our own funding.
Branch out a little bit.
Yes. And became Mid-South Velo. And raced through the 90s a little bit. I had fun riding on the road, but my results on the mountain bike were a little bit better. I made it up to, at the time, it was expert category.
Oh, excellent.
And then really found a lot of time riding in the sport category. All I had to do was get a lot of fitness on the road, and that would transfer over because a lot of the sports did not do road riding at the time. And mountain biking is a lot of fun, but I think you have to put the two together if you really want to be good. And they both complement each other really well.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like we were just chatting about before we started the episode today. Was like Peter Sagan came from mountain bike background. I know Levi. Well, there's a lot of people that use road cycling because you can get those steady state, longer duration efforts. So they use that for fitness building. And then if you're someone who's got good technical skills, then that's kind of the best of both worlds there, right?
Yeah, and when you're on the road bike, when somebody drops a water bottle or there's a brick in the road, which I've seen both of those. And you end up staying upright. That's a good thing. That's where the mountain bike comes in.
The bike handling side of mountain biking can't be ignored for anybody who rides a road bike.
Exactly.
I mean, a lot of the people that we coach that do mountain biking and road riding, if they're focused on mountain biking, they use the road riding to get those like long, steady efforts. But obviously, you really can't replace the technical aspect of mountain biking.
Not at all.
And you learn that pretty quick if you're a strong road cyclist, and then you go try to do a mountain bike race. You find out pretty quick how technical skills and bike handling.
What just happened?
Your aerobic engine only goes so far.
Only so far. And there's only so many times you can catch up on the straighter sections and then lose time in each little twist and bend.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
So your first race was when? I'm just curious. The first ever race you participated in on a road bike?
My first, it was USCF at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Was up in Chicago. I lived in Northbrook, Illinois for a while.
Okay.
And trying to think, the first one might have been a crit in Downers Grove.
Oh, nice.
And
I think they still do crits in Downers Grove.
Yeah, there's a big one there.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if this was
part of
the
their,
one.
Like Speed Week, I think.
But I remember that there was a little bit of water in one turn.
Oh,
and sure enough,
safe.
Guess what happened? Yeah. So I hit the ground, come sliding to a stop. My dad had driven me down there, sliding to a stop right at his feet, virtually.
Oh, wow.
And I guess, I'm out of this. And there's this old, Italian guy. And
it's like breaking away here.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, in that accent, he says, "You came to ride, get your ass out there and go ride. So, okay. So
all bloody and scraped up?
Yeah, so I learned a lot about cycling.
For sure.
Yeah,
That's funny.
That's great. I think everybody has a story like that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you got into cycling and you got into the thick of racing, especially crit racing, you know, at some point, you probably went down.
Yes.
And if your bike wasn't totaled, somebody told you to get your butt back on the bike and get back in the race. I mean, I think the mental toughness side and just the toughness side of
for sure
of cycling, you know, is something that can't be ignored as well.
So, let's dive into it.
All right. So when, why, how did you get into doing frames?
I started riding back in 1972. Lug steel was the way all the bikes were built.
Yep.
And I always thought it'd be really cool to be able to build one, but that wasn't even an option. I didn't really know anybody who built them. And, but I started out with a Raleigh Grand Prix, moved up to a Raleigh competition. Yep. And then I was at college, and I'm sure you know the movie Breaking Away.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't at Indiana. I was at Georgia, and they did a not well-known, very short-lived TV series on Breaking Away, and they filmed it down there.
Really?
And I was an extra in the pilot, riding a bike, and a bunch of a friend of mine was in charge of gathering up the extras for each day of filming. So when they ran short, I was one of the people he'd call up. So I was sitting in a Wendy's eating a hamburger, playing video games. I was a bellhop, all kinds of other stuff. But I used that money to buy an RRB, which is a shop up in Chicago. And that was my first really nice bike. Okay. And I put a Campy Nuva record group on it. But I always wanted to know how to build them.
Yeah.
And not too many years ago, there was a friend I had at work, another pilot, was a rider, and we'd flown together and talked about it a lot. And he saw me in the simulator building, and he came running up to me and said, "Let me show you what I've been doing." And he pulls out pictures of this frame he's building. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. So, and he asked him all the questions. And there are lots of supply houses now, a lot of information online. Yeah. There's still some books. So I kind of thought about it for a while and just kind of put it on the back burner. And then just one day, I said, I'm going to do this.
Today's the day,
yeah. And so he lived over a little outside of Nashville, but he was over here all the time for work. Okay. And I started hitting him up for information, and he was actually kind of using Mike Crum, who had Magnolia cycles at the time, and he was one of the original guys at Victory Bike Shop.
Yeah.
He was building here, and he's since moved out west. But Ted was kind of having Mike look over his shoulder, and so I kind of got in on that. Mike looked over my shoulder. I built 2 fixed gear bikes for my kids, so they were the initial guinea pigs. Okay. And then I built one for myself.
Well, they're less likely to sue you if something goes bad, right?
Exactly, yeah. And initially, I really just kind of wanted it to be a hobby, and I just, built for myself and for my family, and built every single bike I could think of for all of us. And a couple people started asking me if I'd build for them. And then it became time.
So it's just kind of a natural progression, huh?
Yeah. And needed to buy insurance because reading online with the legal climate we live in,
for sure,
you really don't want to just kind of throw yourself to the
It's
wolves out there.
Unfortunate, but something you definitely have to do.
Yeah.
So how did those first few builds go?
Actually, the Mike, I'd bring them into Mike, and he'd line them and everything. They weren't horrible, but they needed some aligning, and there were gaps in the brazing material and lugs, and he'd smack me around and make me go back and fix that. And but they're both still on the road, and then the next bike I built was for myself, and it's still on the road. Excellent. So they're hanging in there.
So like start to finish, how long is that process for you?
It's gotten shorter. I built a bike for my brother, and I actually tracked the number of hours I put into it. And at the time it was 40 hours, but he had some, I did polished lugs, stainless steel lugs. So that added to it. Yep. And I need to go back and just try again, see how many hours I'm putting into them now. But with work getting in the way, if I'm in town, out of town, the time span from start to finish can vary quite a bit. But Generally, I'd say up to 6 months. You have to be a little patient. It's not going to get there tomorrow. But 3 to 6 months, depending on my work schedule.
Gotcha.
Excellent.
So what is your attraction to steel, and what, if any, benefits are there over other materials that are pretty common?
I really like the ride quality of steel. It has a life to it. To me, it feels very good. I trust it, and it takes the harshness out in a lot of ways. I went over to France and rode in the Alps a number of years ago, and rented. It was I don't want to use any names, but it was a well-known carbon bike, and it was their kind of endurance model. It was supposed to be a little bit softer, but to be honest, I felt it was a little bit harsh, and I wasn't real confidence inspiring on the bumpy downhills they have over there. I was used to a certain feel, and a lot of people assume that steel is very noodly, like they were back in the 70s.
Heavy, noodly, flexes a lot when you're really trying to put power down.
Yeah, but since the standard skinny tube, 1970s, basically thick wall, skinny tubes. There are a lot of different tube sets out there now, larger diameters, thinner walls. Up until True Temper decided to get out of the bike business, they had their S3 tube set, which I built one frame out of it, and that came out at 1,400 grams, which is, I think, pretty close to titanium weight range.
Okay.
And it feels really good, and it's 38 millimeter down tube, so it's at that, and that holds the bottom bracket in place.
Gotcha.
So when you stomp on it, it stays put the way I want it to.
Excellent.
And the total bike, depending on which scale I use, it's about 15.5 to 16 pounds with full up.
What size frame would that be?
56 by
56.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, so you're just barely above what the UCI would allow. For pro cycling, you're right under that 15-pound mark for being a legal bike and not having to add weight to it. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think most people, the conception would be if you're getting steel, it's going to be heavy and it's not going to be as stiff.
And that's really, and that's the way it was many years ago, but it's not the way it is now.
Gotcha.
So as with all technology, that technology has improved a ton as well.
And the nice thing is when True Temper got out of the bike business, there's a company up in Ohio called Verywall that jumped into the hole they left, and they've got a tube set that's, I haven't tried it yet, but it's supposed to be basically a clone of S3.
Okay.
Interesting.
So really nice. This S3 stuff is really hard. I found, started working with, I do all my miters, basically where you fit the tubes together with hacksaws and files. And first time I bared down with a file, I sheared a bunch of the teeth off the file. It's that hard. Yeah.
It is.
So you got to kind of be gentle with it.
Gotcha.
Wow.
But that bike's been on the road for, I think, 3 summers now, and it's still hanging in. And I brought it over to France and rode it in the Pyrenees this summer, and it hung in there. Did real well. Yeah.
Cool.
So are there any, what are the, trends you're seeing as far as, steel bikes? Are most people wanting gravel bikes? Are steel mountain bikes still in there? What's the trend right now?
Right now, everybody wants a gravel bike. That's it. Yeah. And it's fun.
It's the same as across, I think, the cycling industry as a whole. I think there's a lot of people gravitating towards that also.
It's a lot of fun. And I think the gravel races are able to attract more of a grassroots kind of crowd. So that makes it fun. But I see a lot of people are wanting gravel bikes. I built one for myself. Have built a couple now. Let me see, 3, I think, just within this. Yeah, it's just this year. And my output isn't very high, so 3 is a lot.
How many bikes would you say you do per year?
I can do up to about 5.
Okay.
And this year I did a couple for myself, and then 3 of them for other people.
Oh, interesting.
And,
cool.
Usually, if there's a hole in the schedule, I find some reason to build a bike for myself.
So that N+1 rule is really in effect. It's probably worse if you know how to do it.
Yeah. My wife's getting tired of bicycles everywhere.
She's like, our kitchen table does not need a bicycle on top of it.
And then my kids have their life situations have changed, and so the bicycles that they'd had at their places have now migrated back. So we've got a lot of bikes.
Need extra room?
Yes.
That's hilarious.
Yes, I've taken over quite a bit of the upstairs.
That's funny.
You force the kids to move out so there's a place to put the bikes? Kids, you're gone. Sorry, I need extra space for these bikes.
Yeah, well, that's they left and they took the bikes with them. And now the bikes are
now they're back.
And we're out of room.
That's funny.
So a lot of the bikes that you're doing are custom geometry?
Yes. Pretty much I've been working with people who are cyclists and know what they want fit-wise. And so basically I'll take some measurements from them, throw that into a fit calculator, compare that with their bike, and just talk to them about what they want out of the bike, and then draw it up and basically go with custom. And the nice thing is, however many water bottles you want, if they'll fit, I can get them on there. One of the last gravel bikes, the guy wanted one of those little bento boxes on the top too, so put a couple water bottle mounts there. And he's got nice clean spot for that. And,
so I assume like fenders and stuff, if someone was wanting fender mounts.
Yeah. And everybody's got a different idea how big their tires they want, and within reason, because the tire and the chain stays and the crankset are all competing for space in a very limited amount of space. And everybody wants really, really short chain stays. And you can't have all that.
Right. So
you just run out of room.
What's the biggest tire size you can fit now?
I've got a 45 on my gravel bike. Okay. And I
know some of them are doing 650B, like 20.
Yeah, let me see, what did I do? I did basically a 29 or 700 rim and 45s. And then, basically with discs now, you can just build it for the biggest wheel they want to use, and then they can scale it up and down as they want, which is, I wasn't a real big fan of discs when they first came out, but that kind of flexibility is pretty cool. Yeah. That gives you some options.
Yeah. And I think for a adventure bike, it's pretty beneficial as far as braking and whatnot. Yeah. I know a lot of people, some of the gravel races or the gravel grinders or whatever you want to call them, the super long distance stuff like Kanza and Land Run and stuff like that. You get to those races on a day where it's rained.
Exactly.
And you're gonna be super happy you had some discs.
Yes, very much so.
It's not all clogged up on your caliper brake set. Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
So, as far as you kind of described the process of doing a custom frame. So after you get some measurements from them, you just go to town on it, or talk to them about the finishings and stuff like that?
Yeah, there's a conversation that takes place. Most important thing is fit.
For
if the bike doesn't fit, it's worthless.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about what they wanted to do. I believe that the front end geometry, has a lot to do with how the bike handles. Some people spend a lot. I don't think wheelbase and chainstay length has nearly the effect that a lot of people say it has. And so I kind of talk over the handling qualities they want, any kind of braze-ons. One of the bikes I just did was my first foray into running an internal cable route down the top tube, and things like that. And tire size. I like to try to talk people into going with fairly good-sized chain rings up front. For here in Memphis, I've seen a lot of bikes where they manage to, they're working that real estate in that area by running really small chain rings. And then you get out on the flats and you're down to 2 or 3 gears at the very bottom of the smallest cogs. And you've got a 3-speed. And so I encourage people to work with a big enough chain ring that they can be in the middle of the cassette in the back and have some choices. Things like that are all part of the conversation.
Yeah, well, especially now, like with the, I guess SRAM's got the 1x12 now. I mean, that's a huge range. You know, you can throw a 46 or 50 even on the front, and have a massive range there.
Yeah,
awesome. Well, we always like to end it with any kind of tips that you might have for people who are on a time budget, you know, wanting to stay fit, maybe not competitive, but, you know, some things that you do to make sure that you get in some training.
I would say, first of all, in Memphis, we can ride just about year round. Yep. So if you can afford it, buy good clothing to ride in the wintertime.
Absolutely.
And you'll be a lot happier in the spring. And don't feel that you have to go out for X number of minutes or hours every time you go out. If you've got 45 minutes, you can go get the shorter the time, maybe go more intense with a good warm-up. And just ride when you can, and don't put artificial constraints on and say, well, not worth it to go out if I don't go out for 2 hours.
Exactly.
That's something we've talked about a decent amount. It's and when we're planning a program for a person, it's like, tell us what is realistic for you, not what is I hope to be able to get in. I hope to get 2 hours on a Friday morning. But you realize you had to stay up late and you got to get into the office or whatever it may be, and now you're like, well, crap, I only have 45 minutes. Well, that's not even close to 2 hours, so I'm just going to scrap it. And it's like, if we're planning around 45 minutes, you can get a lot of quality. And if you can get extra, great. But you know, some is always better than none.
Exactly.
And I think that's exactly
the biggest thing people misjudge is the time it takes to start and right after. So like getting your clothes on, having all that stuff to get out the door, like how much time is there. So where they say I got 2 hours in the morning to work out, you know, when you get up, you do your whole routine. By the time you get out the door, you really have like an hour to 45 minutes to an hour.
Especially in the wintertime.
Sure, exactly,
That's my one rule. The ride doesn't count unless you spend more time riding than you did getting dressed.
Right? That's funny. I've got one more question. If you could only have one bike, what would it be? Kind of break down what that bike would be, geometry, if you want to go into that a little bit.
I would do a gravel bike with a fairly high bottom bracket. I like high bottom brackets because I hate pedal strikes. And I see a lot of mountain bikes with low bottom brackets, and guys are yard sale all over the place every time they nail a stump. But I'd go with a kind of high bottom bracket, discs, and maybe go with a couple wheel sets. I would go with more of a road-oriented front end, 73 degrees, not too big of a fork offset, and basically make it a road bike that you can ride on gravel. And around here, I think a quick handling bike, if you're going to go out on the trails, is the way to go. That's how I did my mountain bike. Did a really steep front end, and it just, you flick it all up and just have a blast.
It just whips.
It really does. So kind of a road-oriented gravel bike with a kind of high bottom bracket is what I do.
I like it.
Cool. Well, Earl, we appreciate your time, man. Tell everybody how they can find you.
Let's see. I've got a Facebook page. It's Earl Glazer Cycles, and I've got a website, earlglazercycles.com. It hasn't been updated quite as often as I should, but it's still...
Well, it's because you're busy flying and building bikes in all of your extra free time.
And my email is earlglazercycles@gmail.com, and you can always contact me that way.
Excellent.
Awesome. Well, man, we appreciate it. And if you guys have any questions for Earl, get in touch with him, and we will catch you guys next time. Funston, you got anything to end with?
Nope. I think I'm good.
All right. We'll catch you
Earl,
guys.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.
Peace.
Adios.